Our guest on This Is America is Alyse Nelson. She's president and CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership. She's also author of the new book, Vital Voices, The Power of Women Leading Change Around the World. Alyse, thank you so much for joining us, sitting down and talking a little bit about Vital Voices.
Thank you as well.
Vital Voices, if someone is just running and bumping up against this phrase and this term and this organization for the first time, what would you say?
Well, if I had 2 seconds, I'd say investing in women to improve the world. At the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Investing in women to improve the world. How does that show up on a day-to-day basis?
Well, we search the world for what we believe is the most extraordinary untapped potential, women leaders. They could be women who are safeguarding human rights, women who are building stronger political systems, women who are pulling people out of poverty through microfinance, through entrepreneurship. And we invest in them as leaders. They are leading networks of others, so we know by investing in them, they're going to pull up their entire network of others.
When you say invest, how do you invest?
We invest not through money necessarily. It's more through sort of social and human capital investments. So what I mean by that is connecting them to a network of their peers, which that's actually extremely important, because remember that leadership, I'm sure you know, is a very lonely occupation. They're very lonely. They're trailblazers in their countries. But also we connect them to mentors. We provide them with training. We do sometimes provide financial support, but actually that has not been the most important thing. I mean, we found the connections and the providing them with skills training to be far more effective.
Do you call it, is it fair to say it's a global organization?
It's extremely global, 144 countries.
And do you have like a membership?
Sort of. We train and support women, but we don't support them within a program for a set period of time, and it really is on their sort of life path of leadership. So many of the women we've supported, we'd call them alumni or network members. We've been supporting them for 14, 15, for a long time.
Pick a couple out of your book. We'll talk a little bit about your book, Vital Voices, in a few minutes. Pick out a couple just out of the air and show us how it works.
How our investments work, sure. So one of the women featured in the book is a woman named Kekenya Ntaya from Kenya. And I met Kekenya in 2006. And I need to tell you a little bit about Kekenya's story so you know the impact that we had on her. So Kekenya grew up in a Maasai village in the Masai Mara in Kenya. Girls age 7 were pulled out of school. They underwent female genital cutting, and then they were basically promised to be married. So in her perspective, her life at that point was over, and she wouldn't have the opportunity to make decisions about her own life. And she looked at her mother, and she didn't want to end up in the same situation. And so she realized she had one tool to negotiate with, and that was going through this practice of female circumcision. And she negotiated with her father, and her father said, okay, yes, I will keep you in school, and you don't have to be promised off to be married if you go through this practice. So they agreed. She went through the practice, she stayed in school, she made it all the way to high school, and then she decided, I don't know how she got this idea, she decided, I'd like to go to college in the United States. She somehow manages to get a scholarship in Pittsburgh. She somehow manages to get her village all together to pool their money to get her on a flight to Pittsburgh. I meet her in 2006. She's a dissertation away from her PhD in education. Okay, so at this moment in time, it's really been a vision and it's been her personal path. But what she says to me when I meet her, she says, I have a debt to pay back. I need to go back to my country and I need to build the first girls' school in my community, and I need to change culture. I need for people to understand that they need to keep their girls in school. And so we go back with her. We help her to break ground on her new school.
Wow.
And I have to tell you, to me it was ultimate success that day. I remember I was very concerned with who we brought on this delegation. We had to bring a powerful group of women to surround her when she was breaking ground. But actually, the fact that we just showed up, that's what was important. And it made people in the village really feel as though the world was watching. And so many men that day said to me, oh, I'm Kekenya's brother. I'm Kekenya's father. Every man wanted to somehow be connected to Kekenya. And to me, that was success, because that was culture shift. They were proud of one of their daughters who'd come back to break ground on this school. We helped her to gain training and support to build the school. Now there are 90 girls who are enrolled in that school. 90 girls' lives have been changed.
So be clear now with us, as we're listening to you, the role that Vital Voices played. Extend that a little bit.
Sure. So Vital Voices met her, saw great leadership potential in her. We invested in her by providing her with training, with mentors. We helped her to raise her own money.
Okay.
We nominated her for awards, which also gave her increased visibility and credibility. She was able to then, with those funds and that increased credibility, but also confidence, and a network of women from around the world, from throughout Africa. You know what she said to me when she left to go back to Africa to start up this village? She said, you know, when I left my village, no one came except for my mother to see me off on the plane.
Whoa.
When I left the United States to go back,
right.
I have a family of people rooting for me.
Wow.
You can't underestimate, you know, I mean, as I said before, leadership's a lonely occupation.
Nicely done. You've given us a taste of what you're up to. Just a couple of questions before we go to the break, and so I'm just going to hold you to that one right now. Big ceremony coming up at the Kennedy Center, where you're going to be giving awards to a number of women from all over the world. And we're going to meet some of them in the next couple of days on our programs. Tell us, just in a headline, the 4 women we're going to be meeting.
Well, this extraordinary group of women from the Middle East, I know you're going to be speaking with. So you've got Salwa, a woman from Libya, who is actually part of the National Transitional Council. She was elected to be one of the 2 women, and she resigned in protest.
Hold that there. Number 2?
There is also a woman named Shatha. She is a blogger from Yemen. She talks about how they have created a new normal in their society, demanding, obviously, and overthrowing a dictator. And she's 26 years old.
Hold on that.
Then there's Marianne from Egypt. And Marianne is working to bring different parts of civil society together. And she's a youth activist, a women's activist. She talks about a new normal as well. She talks about how in the square, men and women were not men and women. They were Egyptians.
So we got Egypt, Libya, Tunisia.
I didn't talk about Tunisia yet.
Okay.
So in Tunisia, a wonderful youth activist named Amira. And Amira comes from a family of activists. She herself, when she went to school outside her country, was denied access back in.
Yes.
And she was able finally, after the revolution, to get back. But she's a dynamo.
Okay. Hold on that note. Alyse Nelson is our guest. She's president and CEO of the organization Vital Voices. And the book I have in my hand, Vital Voices, The Power of Women Leading Change Around the World. And the foreword is by Hillary Clinton. And we're going to talk about Mrs. Clinton in just a moment. Sit tight. We'll be right back. This is America.
This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotendaro Family Trust.
Alyse, Beijing, 1995, a big UN conference, the 4th, I think they said, on a women's conference, right? And you were there. How did you get to go there? That you were in school at the time, right? Or
I was 21 at the time.
Graduating from Emerson or around that time?
I was between my junior and senior year of college. And for me, I was just desperate to understand my place in the world. You know, I was desperate growing up in this increasingly interconnected global society, wanting to know what rights and opportunities did women around the world face. I knew that my mother and my grandmother had fought so that I would have, the same rights, almost the same rights as men, certainly in this country. Not quite there yet, but close. But I believe that probably wasn't the case around the world. But you couldn't read books back then or newspaper articles about what was going on for women around the world.
Yeah, that's right.
So I heard about...
It was kind of hidden, yeah. And
it was hidden.
And they talked about women's issues, right?
Women's issues,
That's what they
yes.
talked about. But go
Yes.
ahead. So there you are at the
So I
big...
heard about the conference, and I just decided I had to be there. And
Where'd you get the money to go?
I saved and borrowed money.
Okay.
I must
That's
credit
good,
my
that's good. I like
sister.
that.
I somehow got her to lend me some money. I finally paid her back, but no, I saved and borrowed money. I had to get there.
How many countries were represented? How many women were there?
Well, there were 189 countries and governments represented at the official conference, and then at the NGO forum, which is where I was, the parallel forum with activists. There were 55,000 women.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so now it's toward the end of the conference, and at that time, First Lady Hillary Clinton gives a talk. How did that go down? What was the impact? What did she say?
Oh, for me, it was a transformative moment, because I think as an American woman, there I was thinking, okay, what can I do? How can I be part of the solution? There are all these problems. I mean, I found out for the first time about the issue of human trafficking, right? The issues of microfinance and how it was transforming South Asia.
Yep.
And I kept thinking, what am I supposed to do? What can I do? I went to hear Hillary. Obviously, was extremely proud to have my First Lady travel there and speak out so boldly, talking about women's rights as human rights. And I felt like in that speech, she somehow captured every single little conversation that I had had with women, in little tents and in the rain and in cafes, women that I had met there about all these various issues. And she took these issues to the world stage. I mean, issues that nobody was talking about. It wasn't popular back then to talk about these issues. And I realized at that moment that here was a woman who recognized that she had voice and power and a platform.
Yep.
To speak as the First Lady of the United States, and she was going to get to that conference. It was. I don't know if you remember, but it was very political whether she should go or not
Yes,
go
I do.
to China.
Yep.
And she went, and when she spoke out, I think it made me realize I too have a voice, and I have to use that voice.
The key phrase was women's rights are human rights, right? And that echoed really amongst all of those women and really echoed around the world.
It did.
It started off as a government initiative, and then it kind of has morphed over the years into an organization, an NGO.
Nonprofit, totally
nonprofit.
bipartisan
Yeah.
or nonpartisan even.
And is it true that you were the first employee?
I was.
What happened at what, I was thinking about this, and I'm not going to be cavalier about this, but if you're a Bible student, and you go back and you say Adam and Eve, well, at that time, Eve had a lot of power, right? Okay? If you're a biblical scholar. At what point along the way did women lose their voice? Was it just because men were louder and stronger and maybe taller? I mean, how did it culturally work out if half the population of the world is women? How did it work out that women just lost their voice? And now this new effort, even look at how long it took in the United States for women to get their voice.
Well, I think we're seeing some really interesting trends, and it's something that I spend quite a bit of time thinking about. So I think for a very long time, as we were trying to gain our rights, we were talking about rights, and we were saying, it's only fair. I mean, we're 51% of the population. Then I think it shifted over the last decade to look at how actually it's smart to invest in women. We're 51% of the population. You can't expect to compete in a global marketplace if you leave half your talent pool, right? The women and girls of the world behind. You don't educate them. You don't provide them with rights and opportunities. Now I think the argument will soon become, and I hope this book helps to contribute to that, the fact that women are not just an economic force, not just a number to be tapped, or a different number. We're a leadership force to be tapped. And I hope that we will begin to gain back that power. But you're right, we've lost some of that.
But yeah, lost is right. And I was thinking of the whole suffrage movement in the United States starts in the late 1800s, and it's not until 1920 that women get the right to vote. And it's been, I can remember doing shows over the last 20, 30 years of some of the early women that were out in front of creating a women's movement in the United States. So it's a tough slog, but at the same time, everybody knows that women are the cornerstone of a family, of a village, and I was thinking of Hillary's "It Takes a Village" kind of thing, and really of societies. So this incredible imbalance going on. You say 50% of the population can't own property in many countries, can't go to school in many countries, can't get credit in many countries, don't have a political voice. I mean, it's almost amazing to think that, huh?
It is amazing. And you think about it, we're 51% of the population. We have presence, but where's our power? I mean, even if you look globally, we represent 19% of seats in parliaments around the world, right? I mean, over 50% in Rwanda, less than 17% in this country. But it all evens out to about 19% globally. But I don't believe we actually hold 19% of the power and decision making. I believe it's far less.
We have a rather poor track record here in the United States.
We do.
Both in the Senate and in the Congress. And Lord, you know, I hope sometime in the future we have a woman president. And you look at like a Suu Kyi in Burma, Chancellor Merkel in Germany, the woman who's the head of the IMF, is it Lagarde? Is that the pronunciation of
Christine
her name?
Lagarde, yes.
Lagarde,
Yes.
Lagarde. But those are women in the public eye. But you focus in on women of Northern Ireland, who played a huge role in the peace process, and Rwanda, when after the genocide, it's the women who make a big difference, huh?
Well, I think the women that you talk about to me are the household names, right? Aung San Suu Kyi, Hillary Clinton, certainly. They're women we all admire. And luckily, they are phenomenal leaders, in my view. And we don't just need women leaders, we need good women leaders to pave the way so that people realize that's a good idea, actually, to have women in power. We focus on women who have potential, who have talent. We seek them out, find them around the world, and we support them from behind so that they can rise up to that level. So we're focusing on women who are not household names, but should be and could be.
Some years ago, we did a roundtable conversation. And in those days, we would have 3 men, 3 women, and I put out on the table the question, do women see the world differently? And I remember Lynn Cheney took great umbrage at that question.
Really?
Yeah, she did. So the question was, do women see the world differently than men do? And we kicked it around, but I remember her reaction. The very next day, Madeleine Albright, who also played a big role in Vital Voices.
She did.
She was on Meet the Press with Tim Russert. And Tim says to her, Madeleine, or Madam Secretary, I guess he said, do you think that women see the world differently than men? She said, well, of course we do. You know, so it was night and day. But there was a little line in the book where you say that women see problems that men don't see, and to solve things from the inside out within a country is the way to go about it, huh?
You're absolutely right.
So that's why the support that you give the women in their own countries becomes very important, huh?
Yeah, I mean, our approach, which I believe is a very female approach. So we go into a country.
What does that mean, a female approach? That's an interesting phrase.
We go in, I think, listening. So we go into a country and we don't say, okay, here are the 17 problems and here are the 17 solutions, okay? Now, in some cases, this might be a good approach, but we believe in the work that we do, that wouldn't be the best approach. We believe the best approach is to go into a country and to seek out and find those people, those leaders who have the solutions, who have the ideas, and invest in them to create their own reality, their own future.
You've said something that has stuck in my mind. We do it differently. We listen. That's a heck of a statement to put out on the table, suggesting that women listen and men just maybe spout off and try to solve a problem heavy-handedly. It's interesting.
Well, I think that, you know, this is a style of leadership that we've learned from women, that we've seen women around the world pick up and utilize. but it's not necessarily something that men don't do as well. I think as you see more women in leadership positions around the world, I think men's style of leadership will change as well. It has to.
But you know what comes into my mind watching all these hearings on CNN of the people up on the Hill doing these hearings? They're into performance. They're not. A question can be 7 words long and get the answer from the witness. They're up there performing. It's their place in the sun. I want to put this on the table because I think it was startling for me to read this statistic. 600 million women live in countries where domestic violence is not a crime.
Yes.
600 million?
Yes.
My Lord. I mean, and then you mentioned the human trafficking, the genital mutilation.
But you see, that's why it must be solved from within. So I couldn't go into any of those countries and say, this is a problem and you have to fix that. That would not be the way to get to the solution. We have to find those women who are championing that cause, and we need to figure out everything we can do to support them to do that.
You've traveled all over the world.
I have.
The book, Vital Voices, I was saying right before we went on the air here, I used the phrase cut the book, cut the Bible is what they use. That's where I learned it. You just stick a card in. And I was reading last night about this wonderful woman in Cambodia, because I've traveled in that country and learned a little bit. She's out there listening, isn't she?
She is. She is.
Just to give me a quick thumbnail.
So as you know, this book is really trying to bring forth a new leadership model. 5 core principles. The second principle is this idea of deep roots in the community. That empathy.
Do the 5 real quick.
Do the 5.
Yeah.
So really that you have to have a driving force or sense of mission.
Yeah.
That you have to be deeply steeped in the community and understand those people that you're leading. You need to be able to cross lines that typically divide. You have to work with those people who you actually disagree in order to make breakthrough sustainable change. You need to take your bold ideas and turn them into bold action. So it's one thing to have really bold ideas. I think women are so good at this. We don't get enough credit for this. Women think totally outside the box because we don't know what the box looks like. We've never been inside the box for the most part. And then paying it forward, a resolve to pay it forward. And that's just all about how do you give back and mentor others. Women tell me all the time after they leave one of our programs, they say, I feel so full, I'm about to explode. I've gotten so much investment in me. I have to give it away. I have to share it. And I think they understand something so fundamental, which is that power expands the moment it's shared. We see that again and again and again. And you think about it, when leaders hoard their power or their leadership, countries just crumble. Right. I mean, look at Burma, right? But then you look at the other side of Burma, a leader like Aung San Suu Kyi, who is all about empowering the people and sharing power.
And you make a point in the book that if you oppress women and don't bring them along, the country kind of stalls in its progress.
Well,
but if you open it up to everyone, then you can move forward. You think sometimes it's government that plays the key role, but you make a real nice point of saying corporations play a big role, and you particularly go Coca-Cola, Walmart, people who make huge commitments to bringing women forward.
Huge commitments. And you know, they're making these commitments not for PR reasons, they're making these commitments because they realize they're smart. And they realize this is where we need to make the investment because it's the huge untapped potential. So Walmart, for example, I mean, this is huge. This is a multi-billion-dollar investment that they've made. So I think as you've read in the book, you saw that women-owned businesses represent less than 1% of the global supply chain to multinational corporations. They've basically said, we're going to double our spend in terms of buying from women-owned businesses. They're the largest. They're the biggest private sector employer. I mean, they're buying from everybody. So you can imagine the ripple effect. We're talking about cultural change here, right? We're not just talking about economic opportunities. We're talking about a cultural shift.
We're coming to the end of our time. Vital Voices. It's a book that I certainly hope that every woman, every girl reads, but more so that I think men should be reading this book. Based on all of your travels, 200 interviews, profiles of these wonderful women all over the world, and some of them will be meeting over the next couple of programs. Vital Voices, the power of women leading change around the world. This is a terrific book. And thank you so much for putting it together. And I'm understanding it's just out now, so we're one of the first. Very exciting. Thank you, Alyse, very much. Thank you for opening the doors of Vital Voices to all of our viewers. And I look forward to seeing you at the big ceremony coming up.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
For information about my new book, The Chance of a Lifetime, and online video for all This Is America programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net. And now you can follow us on Facebook. This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotendaro Family Trust.